So Katie, can you tell us some stories about what's happened to people who have done their archetypes, who've done the workshop?
Yeah. Well, you should know that if you come to one of my workshops, we'll have you on the webpage next day. So, share everything willingly. No, what I'll do is I can give you some examples. I had a lovely young man come along. He was 20 and he looked like he was about 40. And he was sort of very responsible. He was a Saturn archetype. And that's like the school headmaster. And he was a Midas miser and everything was about money. It was all about how much you can save, and if you save this much, he said, oh, you should see how I micromanage my money. He was very proud of that. I thought that was just appalling. And he was very interested in my reaction. And he came along, he had his life mapped out from the age of 20, and that's why he felt like an old 40-year-old. And it turned out that he'd had a passion for science, and he'd been brilliant at school, the depths of his school. And I figured out he had the Uranus archetype, which is this brilliant, absent-minded professor type with a passion for science. And I challenged him early on, and I said, I think you're meant to be a scientist. Why aren't you at uni? What are you doing working in a financial company? Well, I can sell shares and I can do this with money. That when we go into shadow, you'll find one or two of your archetypes will completely dominate your life and everything else doesn't get a look in, and you become unbalanced. And people get very obsessive and twitched on and they can't hear anything. And within a couple of weeks, he realised what he'd done. He said, I love science. It's my passion. I don't even feel worthy enough to read the magazines. And having been dux of his school, he then had a chip on his shoulder about, I can't really talk to really bright people because, I didn't go to university. And I said, well, if you feel like that at 20, how will you feel at 40 and 50? And so now he's enrolling at university next year to go to do science. He's ecstatic. He's working part-time with his money and guaranteed he's going to make money along the way. But he's learned to free up a bit, and he even went on a world trip, and that's where he is right now. Having said, I'm not going to spend that money, but had longed to do it. He's learned how to give to himself, and his life feels so much more balanced. His friends are enjoying him. He looks different. He looks decades younger, and he's a young man living life. And he said, I was so worried, and it was the Saturn archetype, that I would turn into this awful, demanding, rigid father figure who has such a perfectionist, high expectations. And he said, now if I learn to let go of them on myself, I'm not going to do that when I eventually have kids. And he trusts himself now. That's a great example of what the archetypes can do for you.